September 9th, 1943. Attu Island, Aleutian Chain, Weather Station Kodiak 7. Harlan Beckett unfolded the new observation logbook on the steel desk when the station chief, Virgil Satterwhite, placed a second notebook beside it. Green, leather-bound, stamped, "Restricted, official use only" in faded gold letters. Inside were columns that appeared in no meteorological manual Harlan had ever studied during his 3 years at the University of Chicago. Body temperature, blood pressure, pulse rate, sleep duration, appetite, emotional state, special remarks, and strangest of all, at the end of each week, a separate column. Isolation response, scale 1 to 10. Virgil Satterwhite explained it was a new Weather Bureau program in cooperation with the War Department, studying the effects of Arctic conditions on personnel health. Wartime research, he said, understanding human limits in extreme environments, strictly confidential, daily records required. Staff shouldn't know about the medical measurements. Just take readings under the guise of routine health checks, standard preventive care, nothing unusual. Harlan nodded, but his fingers gripped the pencil too tightly. Because this logbook already contained entries from August, from July, from June, from May, from months before his arrival. The previous meteorologist, Thurston Wardell, had filled these columns for 4 consecutive months. Neat handwriting, methodical entries, careful observations. Then he was evacuated. Emergency extraction. Medical reasons. No warning. No explanation. Outside, the polar wind howled across the volcanic rock, and Harlan thought about how meteorologists don't usually measure blood pressure. Harlan Beckett was born in Portland, Maine in 1918, the only child of Raymond and Margaret Beckett. His father, Raymond Beckett, worked as a merchant marine officer, crossing the Atlantic on Liberty ships carrying supplies to Britain. Harlan grew up watching his father leave for months at a time, return for brief visits, then disappear again into the gray ocean. In 1942, Raymond's ship went down in the North Atlantic, torpedoed by a U-boat 300 miles off the coast of Ireland. No survivors. Harlan was 24. His mother, Margaret, collapsed when the telegram arrived. She recovered physically, but something inside her broke. She insisted, "Get an education, stay off the water, don't follow your father's path." Harlan had always loved weather. The way storms formed, the patterns of clouds, the invisible forces that shaped climate. He completed his meteorology certification at the University of Chicago in 1940, studying under professors who'd worked with the Weather Bureau for decades. 3 years working mainland stations followed: Ohio, Minnesota, Montana. Steady work without adventure. Recording temperatures, measuring rainfall, tracking storm systems. Safe. Predictable. Boring. That's why he accepted Attu when the recruitment letter arrived. 18-month contract, $250 monthly, housing allowance after completion. Remote duty in the Aleutians. Extreme conditions. Real meteorology. 25 years old. Time to prove he wasn't afraid of anything. September 7th, Tuesday. A PBY Catalina flying boat delivered him to the station. The flight from Dutch Harbor took 6 hours, most of it through thick fog and rain. Harlan sat in the back with supply crates, watching through small windows as the volcanic islands passed below. Black rock, white snow, gray ocean. No trees, no green. Just endless desolation. The plane landed on a small bay, taxied to a makeshift dock. Harlan climbed out into winds so cold it burned his lungs. Temperature maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but the wind made it feel like 20. The landscape was treeless volcanic terrain, all sharp rock and windswept tundra. Wooden barracks painted dull green sat on a flat area a quarter mile from shore. Weather shelter. Storage buildings, radio tower, generator shed, and one concrete structure without windows, the one that would change everything. Station Chief Virgil Satterwhite, 52, former Navy commander with gray hair cut military short, greeted him with a firm handshake but no smile. "Welcome aboard, Beckett. I expect cooperation and discretion." His voice was flat, emotionless, like a man reading from a manual. He showed Harlan the barracks, 6 small rooms for personnel, a galley with a wood-burning stove, a recreation area with a radio receiver and a shelf of books. Generator runs until 2300 hours, then kerosene lamps only. Radio contact with Dutch Harbor twice daily, 0800 and 2000 hours. Nearest settlement, Atka Village, 110 miles southeast. Supply plane once monthly, weather permitting. Complete isolation. 6 men at the edge of the world. Harlan unpacked his belongings in a room 10 feet by 12 feet. Metal cot with thin mattress, wooden nightstand, small desk and chair, kerosene lamp. On the wall, a calendar showing September 1943 and a detailed map of the Aleutian Islands. He lay on the cot that first night, listening to the wind scream outside, feeling the barracks shake, and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. September 8th, Wednesday, Harlan familiarized himself with operations. The weather shelter stood 200 yards from the living quarters, a small white structure designed to protect instruments from direct sunlight and precipitation while allowing air circulation. Standard instrument array. Maximum and minimum thermometers mounted vertically to record the highest and lowest temperatures over a 24-hour period. Current temperature thermometer for real-time readings. Aneroid barometer for atmospheric pressure measurement. Sling psychrometer with wet and dry bulb thermometers for calculating relative humidity. Cup anemometer mounted on a pole for wind speed measurement. Wind vane for wind direction. Everything calibrated, everything precise. Harlan checked each instrument carefully, compared readings against his pocket thermometer and watch. Air temperature 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Barometric pressure 29.89 inches of mercury. Relative humidity 79%. Wind from the northwest at 9 miles per hour. Cloud cover complete, 10/10 coverage at approximately 2,000 feet. Typical Aleutian weather. Cold, damp, overcast. He recorded everything in the standard meteorological logbook, using the precise notation he'd learned in Chicago. At 0600 and 1800 hours, he launched weather balloons. Large helium-filled balloons carrying radio transmitters and sensors. Watch them rise into the gray sky, become small dots, finally disappear into the clouds. The transmitters sent back data. Temperature decreasing with altitude, pressure dropping, wind speed increasing. At 17,000 feet, temperature was 4 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. At 33,000 feet, 40 degrees below. At 66,000 feet, the balloon burst and fell silent. Standard stratospheric profile. Harlan filled out the observation forms, calculated atmospheric stability indices, transmitted everything to Dutch Harbor via the radio operator. Professional. Routine. Exactly what he'd trained for. This was real meteorology. This was why he'd come. The green notebook hadn't been mentioned yet. He still believed he was here to study weather. Met the rest of the crew that first day. Cook Wendell Craddock, 47 years old, gaunt and hollow-eyed, with narrow shoulders and hands covered in old burn scars that looked like melted wax. The scars ran from his fingertips up past his wrists, disappearing under his sleeves. He never explained them, spoke in monosyllables. Quote 3, quote 4, quote 5. Cooked 3 meals daily without complaint. Oatmeal with canned milk for breakfast. Soup made from dehydrated vegetables and canned meat for lunch. Potatoes with more canned meat, maybe beans for supper. Everything edible, nothing special. But Wendell himself barely ate. Harlan noticed this immediately. At the common table in the galley, Wendell would fill his plate like everyone else, sit down, pick up his fork, move food around, take maybe 2 bites, then scrape the rest into the waste bucket. His face showed no emotion, no explanation, just methodical food preparation followed by methodical food rejection. Strange behavior for a cook. Radio operator Fletcher Drummond, 34 years old, thin and nervous, with pale blonde hair that fell across his forehead and eyes that never stayed still, always darting, always checking corners and doorways. He had a habit of chewing his fingernails until they bled, then chewing more. His fingers were raw and scabbed. Worked 12-hour shifts in the radio shack, a small plywood structure attached to the main barracks. Monitored military frequencies, received and transmitted weather reports, maintained communication schedules with Dutch Harbor and ADAC. Said he missed his family terribly. Wife named Dorothy and 2 daughters, 8 and 6, back in Seattle. Showed Harlan a photograph, smiling woman in a flowered dress with 2 little girls in matching ribbons. But when Fletcher looked at that photograph, his hands trembled so badly the image blurred. He'd stare at it for minutes, silent, eyes wet, then carefully tuck it back into his shirt pocket and return to his radio equipment. Mechanic Dalton Grimes, 40 years old, built like a wrestler, 5'10" and maybe 200 pounds of muscle, square jaw covered in perpetual stubble, calloused hands that could tear a wrench apart. Maintained everything mechanical on the station. Diesel generator that provided electricity 12 hours daily, snow tractor for moving supplies, water pump that pulled from a nearby stream, oil-burning heaters in each room. Worked silently, methodically, with intense concentration. But Harlan noticed how he gripped his tools, wrench, screwdriver, pliers, with such force that his knuckles turned white and the metal groaned. And sometimes, when Dalton thought no one was watching, he'd stop working and just stand there, staring at nothing, breathing heavily, fists clenched. Dr. Rufus Caldwell, 44 years old, tall and thin, wearing thick-lensed spectacles that magnified his gray eyes to an unsettling size, smelled always of bay rum aftershave mixed with something medicinal and chemical, like formaldehyde or ether. The medical office was his domain, kept in perfect order. Glass-fronted cabinets containing pharmaceuticals in labeled bottles, aspirin, morphine, sulfa powder, iodine, quinine. Shelves of bandages, gauze, surgical instruments in metal trays. On his desk sat Gray's Anatomy, the Merck Manual, copies of the Journal of the American Medical Association. He spoke with careful politeness, choosing each word precisely, but there was no warmth in his voice. Conversations with Dr. Caldwell felt like medical examinations, clinical, detached, as if he were studying you rather than talking to you. Geologist Merritt Yancey, 31 years old, the youngest besides Harlan, with thick black curls that wouldn't stay combed and a habit of whistling patriotic songs while he worked. Always cheerful, always energetic, always friendly. He'd been on the station 2 years, studying the volcanic geology of Attu Island. His room was filled with rock samples, basalt, pumice, obsidian, each carefully labeled with location and date. He examined them under a magnifying glass, made sketches, took notes in a field journal, talked enthusiastically about completing his doctorate after the war. "Once I get back to Berkeley, I'll have enough material for 3 papers," he'd say. The only one who seemed genuinely alive. The others appeared hollow, as if they were performing roles rather than living. Cook who doesn't eat, radio operator who trembles, mechanic who rages silently, doctor who feels nothing. Only Merritt seemed real. September 9th, Thursday. The station chief handed him the green notebook. It happened in the evening, after the generator shut down at 2300 hours. Harlan sat in his small room reading by kerosene lamplight when someone knocked. Virgil Satterwhite entered without waiting for an answer, sat in the wooden chair, placed the green leather notebook on the desk. The lamplight made shadows on his face. "Beckett, we have an additional program. Extra assignment beyond your meteorological duties. The Weather Bureau, in coordination with the War Department Office of Research, is conducting a study on the effects of prolonged isolation on personnel in Arctic environments. You'll maintain a medical log, daily records of everyone's health indicators, body temperature, blood pressure, pulse rate, sleep quality, appetite, mood, all recorded in this notebook. Dr. Caldwell will assist with the actual measurements, but you'll keep the official records. Personnel shouldn't know about the program's true purpose. Tell them it's preventive care. Routine medical procedures to monitor health in extreme cold. Nothing more. Understood? Harlan nodded slowly. Yes, sir. But why me? I'm not trained in medicine. Virgil's expression didn't change. You're trained in observation and data recording. That's sufficient. The program is classified. You'll submit the log to me each evening, directly to my hands. Never leave it unattended. Never discuss it with anyone. Clear? Yes, sir. Good. Start tomorrow morning. Virgil stood to leave. Harlan opened the notebook and froze. The pages already contained entries, months of entries, beginning May 1st, 1943. Neat handwriting, precise and methodical. Radio operator Fletcher Drummond, May 1st, temperature 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit, blood pressure 120/80, pulse 72 beats per minute, sleep duration 7 hours, appetite good, mood stable, isolation response 2 points. And then May 2nd, May 3rd, every single day, 4 months of continuous observations. Harlan flipped through the pages, noticed gradual changes. Fletcher Drummond, pulse increasing from 72 to 78 to 82. Sleep decreasing from 7 hours to 6 to 5. Mood deteriorating from stable to somewhat anxious to highly anxious. By August, temperature 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Pressure 122/78. Pulse 84. Sleep 5 hours. Appetite fair. Mood. Anxiety, irritability, difficulty concentrating. Isolation response 6 points. Dalton Grimes. Blood pressure climbing. May. 135/88. June. 138/90. July, 143/95. August, 150/100. Notes about aggression. Quick to anger. Hostile responses to simple questions. Broke wrench during routine maintenance. Isolation response. 8 points. Wendell Craddock. Appetite vanishing. May, appetite good. June, appetite decreased. July, appetite poor. August, refusing most meals. Weight loss estimated 15 pounds. Affect flat. Isolation response, 7 points. Only Merritt Yancey remains stable throughout. Mood cheerful. Energy high. Sleep 8 hours. Isolation response, 1 point. Every week. Every month. Consistent. The handwriting was signed at the bottom of each week's entries. T. Wardell. Thurston Wardell. The previous meteorologist. Harlan closed the notebook, looked at Virgil, who stood in the doorway. Virgil answered without hesitation, his voice flat. Virgil moved toward the door. __quote _29 __. He left. Harlan sat alone with the green notebook and a kerosene lamp. Outside, the wind screamed. Questions circled in his mind like storm systems. Meteorologists don't measure blood pressure. That's medical work. Why assign this to him? Why not have Dr. Caldwell keep these records? And why did Thurston Wardell, who'd maintained these observations so methodically for 4 months, suddenly suffer a psychological breakdown? What had he discovered? What had he seen? The notebook felt heavy in Harlan's hands. Not physically, but with the weight of something wrong. Something hidden. September 10th, Friday, he began measurements. Morning, 7:30, before breakfast. Personnel gathered in the galley for coffee while Wendell prepared oatmeal on the wood stove. Harlan entered carrying a medical bag, leather satchel containing a sphygmomanometer for blood pressure measurement, stethoscope, oral thermometers in individual glass tubes, pocket watch for timing pulse. __quote_30___. Wendell Craddock shrugged without looking up from the stove, rolled up his left sleeve. Harlan wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his upper arm, just above the elbow, pumped the rubber bulb to inflate the cuff, placed the stethoscope bell on the antecubital fossa, the inner elbow where the brachial artery runs close to the surface. Released air slowly from the cuff while listening. First sound, systolic pressure, 138 millimeters of mercury. Sound disappears. Diastolic pressure, 92. Elevated. Normal would be 120/80. Harlan recorded it. Shook down a glass thermometer, placed it under Wendell's tongue. Waited 3 minutes. 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Perfect normal. Took Wendell's wrist, found the radial pulse, counted for 30 seconds while watching his pocket watch. 74 beats per minute. Normal resting rate. __quote_31__. Wendell's response was flat, emotionless. 6 hours. Maybe less. Enough. Appetite? Don't have much of one. Harlan noted everything in the green notebook. Cook Wendell Craddock, September 10, 1943. Temperature 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Blood pressure 138/92. Pulse 74 beats per minute. Sleep duration 6 hours. Appetite reduced. Mood apathetic. Isolation response 7 points. Why 7 points? Because that's what Thurston Wardell had recorded in his final August entries. Harlan was simply continuing the pattern. Next was Fletcher Drummond. The radio operator sat on a wooden bench, chewing his nails, knee bouncing nervously. Temperature 98.2. Blood pressure 122/78. Pulse 76. Harlan noticed Fletcher's hands trembling when he rolled down his sleeve. "Everything normal?" Fletcher asked, voice tight with worry. "Everything's fine," Harlan reassured him. Wrote, Radio operator Fletcher Drummond, September 10, 1943. Temperature 98.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Blood pressure 122/78. Pulse 76 beats per minute. Sleep 5 hours. Appetite fair. Mood, anxiety. Isolation response, 5 points. Dalton Grimes was next. The mechanic sat heavily on the bench, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "These damn checks again? Wardell did this every week. Now you're doing it. When does it end?" Harlan didn't engage, just measured. Temperature 99.1, slightly elevated. Blood pressure 148/98, significantly elevated. Pre-hypertensive range. Pulse 86, fast for a resting rate. Harlan recorded. Merritt Yancey approached cheerfully, whistling, quote, 49, quote, sat down with a smile, quote, 50, quote. Temperature 98.0, blood pressure 115/70, perfect. Pulse 64, excellent. Harlan wrote. Dr. Caldwell was reading a medical journal in the recreation area. Harlan approached. Dr. Caldwell looked up over his thick spectacles. Dr. Caldwell said slowly. Harlan didn't argue. Approached Virgil Satterwhite's office. Knocked. Quote 61. Quote 62. Virgil didn't look up from the papers on his desk. No, I'm administration, not subject to this protocol. Maintain records on the 4 crew members only. Wendell, Fletcher, Dalton, Merritt. Yes, sir. That evening, Harlan submitted the green notebook. Virgil reviewed each entry carefully. Nodded. Good work. Continue daily. Same time each morning. Consistency is critical for data validity. September 11th and 12th passed in establishing routine. Harlan spent most of his time on meteorology. Every 3 hours, 0600, 0900, 1200, 1500, 1800, 2100, he walked to the weather shelter through wind and cold. Recorded temperature, pressure, humidity, wind speed and direction, Cloud type and coverage, visibility. The data formed patterns. Temperatures ranged from 38 to 45 degrees. Pressure fluctuated between 29.70 and 30.10 inches. Wind consistently from the northwest at 8 to 12 miles per hour. Clouds always present, always gray, always low. It rained 16 of every 24 hours. This was the Aleutians. Perpetual dampness, perpetual wind, perpetual gray. Twice daily at 0600 and 1800, he launched weather balloons. The routine became meditative. Open the hydrogen cylinder, inflate the 6-foot balloon, attach the radiosonde transmitter package, release, watch it climb, monitor the incoming data stream, temperature, pressure, humidity at increasing altitudes, plot the data on thermodynamic diagrams, calculate stability indices, transmit everything to Dutch Harbor. Professional meteorology. Real atmospheric science. This was what he trained for. The green notebook seemed like an odd administrative requirement, nothing more. Morning measurements before breakfast, evening submission to Virgil. The numbers barely changed day to day. Fletcher slightly more anxious. Dalton slightly more irritable. Wendell slightly more withdrawn. Merritt consistently stable. All within what Harlan considered normal variation for men living in isolation at the end of the world. September 13th, Monday. The first truly strange event occurred. Morning measurements completed as usual. Everyone examined, numbers recorded. After breakfast, Harlan worked in the weather shelter, preparing the 0900 observation. At 8:30, he glanced toward the barracks and saw Dr. Caldwell emerging, carrying a metal case. Not his usual medical bag, but a smaller aluminum case, perhaps 12 inches by 8 inches, with metal latches on the sides. The doctor didn't go to the medical office. He went back into the barracks. Harlan watched through the shelter window. 5 minutes later, Dr. Caldwell emerged, entered the barracks again, emerged, entered. Each time, someone followed him out, rubbing their left shoulder through their shirt. First, Wendell Craddock, face expressionless. Then Fletcher Drummond, looking nervous. Then Dalton Grimes, scowling. Finally, Merritt Yancey, still whistling cheerfully. Dr. Caldwell was administering injections. But why? And why not in the medical office where such procedures normally occurred? That evening, after submitting the green notebook to Virgil, Harlan found Merritt in his room. The geologist sat at his desk examining a piece of black volcanic glass under a magnifying glass, making notes in his field journal. "Merritt, can I ask you something?" "Sure, Harlan. What's on your mind?" "This morning, Dr. Caldwell gave you an injection?" Merritt nodded without looking up. "Yeah, like always. Every Monday morning." "What kind of injection?" "Vitamin complex. Dr. Caldwell says it's for scurvy prevention and general health maintenance. Up here, we don't get fresh vegetables or citrus fruit. Limited diet. So he gives us intramuscular injections of vitamin C, D, B complex, supposedly more effective than oral supplements in cold climates." "Does it hurt?" "For a few days. Shoulder gets sore and bruised, but that's normal for an IM injection, right?" "And how long has this been happening?" Merritt set down his magnifying glass, looked at Harlan. "Since I arrived, May 1942. Every Monday, like clockwork. Been about 16 months now." "The others get the same injections?" "Yeah, Wendell, Fletcher, Dalton, all of us except Virgil and Dr. Caldwell. Virgil refuses, says he takes oral vitamin pills instead, doesn't trust injections." Harlan nodded slowly. "Okay, thanks." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious, making sure I understand all the health protocols on the station." Merritt smiled. "You're thorough. That's good." Harlan left, but his mind was churning. Every Monday for 16 months. Vitamin injections for 4 men. Why wasn't this mentioned in the green notebook? Why wasn't there a column for tracking injections? And why would a geologist, a radio operator, a mechanic, and a cook all need weekly vitamin injections but not the station commander or the doctor? September 14th and 15th brought more observations, more measurements, more routine. Each morning, Harlan took blood pressure, temperature, pulse, recorded sleep quality and mood, submitted the notebook each evening. Virgil read every entry carefully, sometimes asking questions. Fletcher's pressure increased slightly. Why? Not sure. He seemed more anxious than usual. Monitor that. Small changes can indicate larger problems developing. Yes, sir. Harlan's meteorological work continued. 6 observations daily, 2 balloon launches, data transmission to Dutch Harbor. Professional, methodical. But underneath the routine, unease grew. The station felt wrong. Not physically. Everything functioned properly. Equipment worked, duties were performed. But the atmosphere was dead. Like being in a morgue where the corpses still moved. Wendell cooked but never ate. Fletcher monitored radios but never relaxed. Dalton repaired equipment but simmered with rage. Dr. Caldwell treated no one because no one got sick. Virgil observed everyone but explained nothing. And Merritt stayed cheerful while everyone else declined. At night, Harlan lay on his cot, listening to winds shake the barracks, thinking about Thurston Wardell, the previous meteorologist, the man who'd kept these same records for 4 months. What had he discovered? The green notebook showed steady deterioration in 3 of the 4 subjects. Only Merritt remained stable. Why? What had Thurston concluded? And why had he requested emergency evacuation after seeing 4 months of data? Nervous breakdown, paranoid delusions, persecution complex. That's what Virgil said. But what if it wasn't paranoia? What if Thurston had discovered something real? September 16th, Tuesday, Harlan decided to investigate. He waited until 2300 when the generator shut down and everyone retreated to their rooms with kerosene lamps. Waited another hour until the barracks fell silent. Dressed in warm clothing, wool pants, sweater, lined jacket, boots, quietly opened his door. The hallway was dark and empty. He slipped outside. The cold hit him like a physical blow. Winds screaming across volcanic rock. Temperature around 35 degrees, but feeling like 20 with wind chill. Quarter moon provided minimal light. Harlan walked toward the concrete building without windows, the structure he'd noticed on arrival day but never entered. No one ever mentioned it. No one ever went near it. It stood alone, 30 feet by 20 feet, 8 feet tall, flat roof. No windows. Single steel door painted gray. Electrical conduit running from the generator shed. Steam vent on the roof indicating heating inside. Clearly in use. But for what? Harlan approached, tried the door. Locked. Heavy steel door with a military-grade combination lock. He pulled. No movement. Walked around the perimeter. No other entrances. No windows. Just blank concrete walls and that locked door. Ventilation pipes on the roof, stovepipe for oil heater, power lines. The building was climate-controlled, powered, actively used, but completely inaccessible. He stood there for 10 minutes in the screaming wind, staring at that locked door, then returned to the barracks. Lay awake until dawn. What was inside? Why was it locked? Why did no one talk about it? September 17th, Wednesday, Harlan asked Merritt. They were alone in the recreation area. Merritt sat reading a geology textbook, taking notes. Quote, 86. Merritt's cheerful expression faltered. For the first time since Harlan had met him, the geologist looked uncomfortable. Equipment storage. Classified materials. What kind of materials? War Department stuff. Technical equipment. We're not authorized to know specifics. But you've been here 2 years. Never been curious? Merritt closed his textbook, lowered his voice. Of course I've been curious. But Virgil made it very clear when I first arrived. That building is absolutely off limits. Military security. Article 1809 of the Espionage Act of 1917 covers unauthorized access to classified facilities. Federal crime. 10 years in prison. Possible execution if deemed espionage during wartime. I'm not risking that for curiosity. Have you ever seen anyone enter it? Virgil. Dr. Caldwell. Sometimes. Not often. Maybe once a month. They have the combination. The rest of us don't. What are they doing there? Merritt's voice dropped to a whisper. Harlan felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. That evening, Harlan approached Fletcher in the radio shack. The operator sat at his console, headphones on, monitoring frequencies. The radio crackled with static and occasional voice transmissions from distant stations. Fletcher looked up, nervous as always. Fletcher's voice was sharp. Don't ask. Don't talk about it. Just don't. I'm just curious what... Thurston was curious. You know where Thurston is now? San Francisco. Locked up. Medicated. Destroyed. You want that? No, but... Then forget that building exists. We all do. It's easier that way. Fletcher turned back to his radio. Conversation over. Harlan left. His heart pounded. Everyone was afraid. Everyone knew something, but no one would talk. And Thurston Wardell's name kept appearing. The previous meteorologist who asked questions, who investigated, who ended up evacuated with a psychiatric diagnosis. September 18th, Thursday. Harlan examined Thurston Wardell's entries more carefully. Took the green notebook to his room after evening submission, claiming he wanted to study the recording format. Virgil allowed it. Harlan read by kerosene lamplight. May entries. All 4 subjects relatively stable. Minor variations in blood pressure, pulse, mood. Normal fluctuation. June entries. Slight deterioration beginning. Fletcher's anxiety increasing. Dalton's blood pressure rising. Wendell eating less. Merritt still stable. July entries. Deterioration accelerating. Fletcher. Panic episode during radio contact. Took 20 minutes to calm down. Sleep 4 hours. Isolation response. 7 points. Dalton. Threw wrench at generator shed wall. Denied it when confronted. Pressure 148/100. Isolation response. 9 points. Wendell. Ate nothing all day. Weight loss visible. Will not discuss. Isolation response. 8 points. August 1st to 7th. All 3 men in serious decline. Then August 15th. Fletcher experiencing paranoid thoughts. Believes radio transmissions contained coded messages directed at him. Refused to elaborate. Sleep 3 hours. August 18th. Dalton destroyed tool cabinet in rage. Required sedation by Dr. Caldwell. August 20th. Wendell has lost approximately 18 pounds since May. Resembles concentration camp victim. Refuses all meals. August 22nd. Final entry. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. Emergency situation. I can no longer continue this charade. These men are dying. Slowly. Systematically. I believe the Monday injections are not vitamins. I believe this entire station is an experiment. I must leave immediately. Requesting emergency evacuation. Cannot participate further in this nightmare. August 23rd. Different handwriting. Virgil's. __quote _116 Harlan. Closed the notebook. His hands shook. Thurston had discovered something. Enough to risk his career, his freedom, everything. He'd seen what Harlan was beginning to see. This wasn't a weather station conducting a health study. This was something else entirely. September 19th, Friday. During morning measurements, Harlan looked more carefully at the injection sites. When he took Wendell's blood pressure, rolling up the cook's sleeve, he saw the left shoulder. A small bruise, dark purple, about the size of a quarter. Recent. From Monday's injection. Does that hurt? Wendell glanced at it without interest. A little. Always does for a few days. Every time? Yeah. Normal, I guess. Harlan examined Fletcher's shoulder when checking his pulse. Same bruise. Same location. Same size. Dalton's shoulder when removing the blood pressure cuff. Same. Merritt's when adjusting the thermometer position. Same. 4 identical bruises. 4 men. 1 doctor. Weekly injections. For over 16 months. Vitamin injections shouldn't cause significant bruising or prolonged pain. Intramuscular vitamins are typically well tolerated. Minor soreness for maybe 24 hours, minimal bruising. But these bruises were substantial and painful for days. That suggested something more irritating, something the body was reacting against. That evening, Harlan went to the medical office. Dr. Caldwell sat at his desk, writing in a ledger. Medical supply inventory, it appeared. Doctor, may I speak with you? Dr. Caldwell looked up. His magnified eyes were cold behind thick lenses. Yes? I wanted to ask about the vitamin injections you administer. What about them? What specific formulation do you use? A prepared complex. Vitamins B12, D3, and C in sterile solution. Standard preventive protocol for Arctic personnel. Can I see the vials? Dr. Caldwell's pen stopped moving. He set it down carefully. Dr. Caldwell stood. Harlan left. But now he was certain. Dr. Caldwell was hiding something. The injections contained something other than vitamins, or in addition to vitamins, something that caused significant tissue reaction, something administered weekly for years. But what? And why? September 20th through 22nd passed in mounting tension. Harlan continued his dual routines, meteorological observations 6 times daily, medical measurements each morning. But he watched more carefully, noticed patterns. After each Monday injection, all 4 men experienced subtle changes. Wendell more withdrawn, Fletcher more anxious, Dalton more hostile, Merritt less energetic. Effects peaked Wednesday and Thursday. Friday through Sunday, gradual stabilization. Then Monday, another injection. Cycle repeated. It was systematic, controlled. Dose-response pattern. Classic pharmacological timing. Not vitamin supplementation. Chemical intervention. Harlan had studied enough biochemistry at Chicago to recognize it. You don't see weekly psychological and physical cycles from vitamins. You see them from psychoactive compounds, drugs that affect brain chemistry, mood, behavior, consciousness. On Monday, September 20th, Harlan watched the injection procedure more carefully, stood near a window, pretending to record cloud observations, but actually watching Dr. Caldwell's movements. The doctor emerged from the barracks at precisely 0800 hours, carrying the aluminum case, entered Wendell's room. Harlan timed it. 43 seconds. Doctor emerged. Wendell followed, rubbing shoulder. Doctor entered Fletcher's room. 45 seconds. Fletcher emerged, looking nervous. Dalton's room. 42 seconds. Dalton emerged, angry. Merritt's room. 44 seconds. Merritt emerged, whistling but subdued. Each injection, approximately 45 seconds. Military precision. Not the variable timing of casual medical care. This was protocol. Standardized procedure. Rehearsed. Repeated weekly for years. That evening, after submitting the green notebook, Harlan asked Virgil a direct question. Knocked on the office door. Quote, 136, quote. Virgil looked up from his desk. Virgil's eyes narrowed slightly. They're aware they receive health monitoring. That's sufficient. But do they know their data is being collected for research purposes? Beckett. Virgil's voice hardened. Harlan handed over the green notebook. Left. But the answer was clear. Don't ask questions. Don't think. Just obey. Exactly what they'd told Merritt. Exactly what they'd told Fletcher. And exactly what Thurston Wardell had stopped doing. September 23rd, Tuesday. Harlan made a decision. He would investigate the concrete building, find out what was inside. He had to know. That night, after the generator shut down, he waited 2 hours until the barracks fell completely silent. Brought tools from the mechanics shed, screwdrivers, small pry bar, wire for lock manipulation. He'd learned basic lock picking as a teenager in Portland, breaking into abandoned warehouses with friends. This lock was military grade, but old. World War I surplus, probably. Took him 40 minutes of careful work in the freezing wind. Finally, the combination mechanism clicked. The lock opened. Harlan pulled the steel door. It swung inward with a metallic groan. Inside, complete darkness. He switched on his flashlight. The beam revealed a small anteroom, maybe 8 by 10 feet. Concrete walls painted white. Another door ahead, this one not locked, just a handle. Harlan pushed it open. The room beyond was larger, approximately 20 by 30 feet. His flashlight beam swept across the space. Along the left wall, filing cabinets. Olive drab metal, 5 cabinets, each with 4 drawers. Along the right wall, a laboratory bench. Stainless steel surface. Microscope. Centrifuge. Refrigerated storage units still humming with power. Glass beakers and flasks. Test tube racks. In the center of the room, a medical examination table. Steel frame, leather padding, and restraints. Leather straps for wrists. For ankles. For chest. For forehead. All stained dark brown. Old blood. Harlan's stomach turned. This wasn't equipment storage. This was a research facility, a laboratory, an examination room with restraints. He approached the filing cabinets, all locked, picked them open one by one. Inside, manila folders, dozens of them, hundreds. Harlan pulled out the nearest folder. Label, __quote _149 __. Opened it. The first document was a consent form, government letterhead, War Department, Office of Research and Development, dated May 15, 1942. Harlan read slowly, his hands shaking. Quote 150. Signature, Wendell T. Craddock. Date, May 15, 1942. Witness, Dr. R. Caldwell. Harlan's breath came fast. Experimental treatments, administered compounds. Wendell had signed this, agreed to it. But did he understand? Harlan pulled another folder. Subject A-8, Drummond, Fletcher M. Same consent form, same date, Fletcher's signature. Another folder. __quote _152 __. Dalton's signature. Another. Subject A-10, Yancey, Merritt K. Merritt's signature. All 4 men. All signed May 15, 1942. 16 months ago. 24-month study. 8 months remaining. Harlan dug deeper into Wendell's file. Found weekly medical reports, detailed observations. Week 1, May 18, 1942. Subject A7 administered initial dose of compound XR7 at 0.5 milligrams via intramuscular injection. No immediate adverse reactions. Subject reports mild arm soreness. Baseline psychological assessment. Stable mood, normal affect. Week 2. Week 3. Week 4. Dosage increasing. Week 4, June 8, 1942. Dosage increased to 1.0 milligrams. Subject reports increased appetite suppression. Weight decreased 2 pounds. Mood assessment. Slight flattening of emotional affect. Week 8. Dosage increased to 2.0 milligrams. Subject shows marked appetite suppression. Weight loss 8 pounds since baseline. Affect significantly flattened. Social interaction decreased. Reports no distress. Week 16. Dosage 3.5 milligrams. Weight loss 15 pounds. Subject exhibits severe emotional blunting. Minimal response to external stimuli. Continues to perform job functions adequately. No complaints. Week 32. Dosage 4.5 milligrams. Weight loss 22 pounds from baseline. Subject resembles malnutrition case. Affect completely flat. No emotional expression. No social interaction. Performs job mechanically. Psychological assessment. Severe dissociative symptoms. And it continued, week after week. Increasing dosages of compound XR7. Progressive deterioration. 16 months of systematic poisoning. Harlan found another section in the file labeled Compound XR7, Chemical Analysis. The pages contained molecular structure diagrams, long chains of carbon and nitrogen. Technical terminology Harlan barely understood, but one section was in plain English. Compound XR7 is a synthetic dissociative agent developed for potential use in enhanced interrogation and psychological warfare. Effects include emotional flattening, decreased appetite, sleep disruption, suppression of will and autonomous decision-making. Long-term effects unknown. Prolonged exposure may result in permanent personality changes, irreversible psychological damage, or complete psychological collapse. Recommended maximum exposure, 8 weeks. Project AK7 tests extended exposure over 24 months to determine threshold for permanent damage. Harlan felt sick. These weren't health studies. This was human experimentation. Testing how much psychological damage a drug could cause before a man broke completely. And they'd been doing it for 16 months. He found the termination protocol section, read it with growing horror. Upon completion of 24-month observation period, subjects will be gradually weaned from compound XR7 over 4 weeks. Expected withdrawal symptoms include severe depression, suicidal ideation, violent outbursts, psychotic episodes, complete psychological breakdown. Subjects will be monitored during withdrawal. Any subject exhibiting signs of permanent psychological damage will be indefinitely committed to psychiatric facility under national security classification. Subjects will sign non-disclosure agreements under threat of prosecution. Compensation contingent on permanent silence. Any violation results in immediate revocation of payment and federal prosecution. They were destroying these men, slowly, carefully, documenting every stage, and when they were done, anyone who couldn't recover would be locked away forever. Harlan searched for more files. Found __quote _163 __, the previous meteorologist. Opened it. Role description. __quote _164 Thurston had been a test subject too, without knowing it. Used to gather data while kept in the dark about what he was actually observing. The final entry in Thurston's file was dated August 22, 1943. Subject M6 has become aware of research parameters. Discovered filing room during unauthorized entry August 21st. Exhibits extreme psychological distress upon learning true nature of project. Refuses to continue participation. Demands immediate evacuation. Threatens to report research to authorities. Recommendation: emergency extraction and psychiatric commitment under national security classification. Subject M6 evacuated August 23, 0800 hours. Currently detained at Veterans Hospital, San Francisco, under psychiatric observation. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Expected to remain institutionalized indefinitely. Security risk eliminated. They'd locked Thurston away, not because he was crazy, because he'd discovered the truth. And they diagnosed him as insane to discredit him. No one would believe a psychiatric patient. Harlan found his own file. Quote, 166, quote. Opened it. His hands trembled. Quote, 167. Quote, they'd hired him for this, specifically to watch men be destroyed and documented, and he'd done it for 2 weeks without knowing. Harlan photographed everything, used the small camera he'd brought, every page of every critical file, evidence, proof, spent 90 minutes in that laboratory, finally returned everything to its place, locked the cabinets, left the building, secured the combination lock, walked back through the screaming wind. His mind churned with what he'd learned. 4 men being poisoned, 1 man locked in an asylum, and himself an unwitting accomplice in human experimentation. September 24th, Wednesday. Harlan acted completely normal. Morning measurements, weather observations, evening log submission. But inside, he was planning. He needed to expose this, stop it, save these men if possible. But how? The War Department controlled this facility. Virgil was military intelligence. Dr. Caldwell was the research director. They controlled all communication off the island. Radio transmissions went through Fletcher, monitored by Virgil. Supply flights came monthly. Pilots worked for the military. If Harlan tried reporting through official channels, they'd know immediately. He'd end up like Thurston, evacuated, institutionalized, silenced. He needed evidence to reach someone outside military control, civilian authorities, Congress, journalists, someone who could force an investigation. That evening, he spoke with Merritt, found the geologist in his room examining rock samples. Quote, 168, quote. Merritt looked up. His usual cheerfulness faded immediately. Merritt set down his magnifying glass slowly. Merritt stared, then laughed, but the laugh was hollow, brittle. Merritt stood up. His face changed. The cheerful mask fell away. Underneath was something broken and tired. Harlan froze. Merritt's voice was bitter. Stop it, how? I signed a contract. They own me for another 8 months. If I try to leave, they invoke the Espionage Act. If I talk, same thing. Military tribunal, federal prison, or worse. What's worse? They could just keep dosing me until I can't think anymore, until I'm like Wendell, a zombie who just exists. I saw what happened to Thurston. He tried to fight. They destroyed him, locked him away. So I play along, stay cheerful, hope I can last 8 more months and get out before permanent damage sets in. What about the others? Do they know? Wendell doesn't know anything anymore. Whatever they've done to him, he's mostly gone, just functioning on autopilot. Fletcher is too anxious to think clearly, suspects something's wrong but can't process it. Dalton is too angry. Whatever the drug does, it amplifies his worst traits, makes him violent and paranoid. I'm the only one still functional enough to understand. We have to stop this. These men are dying. Merritt grabbed Harlan's shoulders. His grip was desperate. Quote 185, quote 186. Merritt's eyes went wide with fear. You broke into the lab? Yes. Oh God, Harlan, you've killed yourself. They'll know. They'll find out. Not if I can get the evidence off the island first. How? They control the radio, the supply flights, everything. I'm working on that. But I need to know, if I can stop this, will you testify? Tell the truth about what they did? Merritt released him, sat down heavily. If you can somehow, impossibly, actually expose this without getting us all killed or locked away, yes, I'll testify. I'll tell everything. But Harlan, please be careful. These people are dangerous. I know. Harlan left, but he felt less alone. At least one other person knew the truth, could confirm his evidence. That night, he copied key information from his photographs into a small notebook. Condensed format, chemical formulas, dosage records, subject names, dates, everything necessary to prove what was happening. Wrote a detailed letter explaining the entire situation, addressed to Senator Warren Magnuson of Washington State, Senate Military Affairs Committee. If anyone could force an investigation, a senator could. September 25th through 30th, Harlan maintained his cover while planning his move. The supply plane was scheduled for October 1st. The pilot was Lloyd Kittredge, a civilian contractor who'd been flying the Aleutian route for 3 years. Harlan had met him during his arrival flight. Lloyd had seemed decent, complained about military bureaucracy, talked about his wife and kids in Anchorage. Not military, civilian. Maybe someone Harlan could trust. On September 30th, the day before the supply flight, Harlan waited by the airstrip. The area was flat volcanic rock, cleared and graded for landings. Lloyd was there early, performing pre-flight inspections on his PBY Catalina, checking control surfaces, fuel levels, engine oil. Harlan approached casually. Quote, 195, quote. The pilot looked up, wiped his hands on a rag. Quote, 196, quote. Quote, 197, quote. Lloyd's expression became guarded. What kind of something? I need you to deliver documents to Washington. Evidence of illegal human experimentation happening on this station. War crimes. But I can't send it through military channels. They'll intercept it. It has to go directly to Senator Magnuson's office. Lloyd was quiet for a long time, looked at the barracks, back at Harlan. That's a serious accusation. I have proof, photographs, medical files, everything documented. 4 men are being used as guinea pigs for a chemical weapon. They're being slowly poisoned, destroyed. And when anyone tries to stop it, they get locked in a psychiatric hospital. The previous meteorologist, Wardell. Yes, he discovered the truth. They committed him to silence him. Lloyd sighed, rubbed his face. Harlan, I've flown this route long enough to know weird stuff happens at these remote stations. I've seen men come off these islands in bad shape, heard rumors about experiments. But I'm just a pilot. I've got a family, a contract. If I get caught smuggling classified documents, they'll pull my license. Might face federal charges. These men are dying. Someone has to help them. Lloyd looked at the barracks again, at the concrete building, back at Harlan. If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, what exactly are you asking? Tomorrow during supply delivery, I'll slip you a package, small notebook and a letter. You deliver it to Senator Magnuson's office in Washington, personally. Don't mail it. Don't give it to anyone else. Hand it directly to his staff. Lloyd thought for a long moment. If this is legit, if there really is illegal experimentation, someone should know. There is, I swear. All right, give me the package tomorrow, but this conversation never happened. Understood? Understood. Thank you, Lloyd. October 1st, the supply plane arrived at 0900 hours. Lloyd landed smoothly, taxied to the dock, unloaded supplies, food crates, fuel drums, equipment boxes, mail bags. Harlan helped carry boxes from the dock to the storage buildings. During a moment when no one was watching, he slipped the notebook and sealed letter into Lloyd's leather flight jacket. Lloyd's eyes met his briefly. A tiny nod. Then, nothing. Lloyd finished unloading, said his goodbyes, climbed into the PBY, started engines, took off. Harlan watched the plane climb into gray clouds, disappear. The evidence was out. Now, he just had to survive whatever came next. October 2nd through 7th were the longest days of Harlan's life. He continued normal duties. Morning measurements showing progressive deterioration in Wendell, Fletcher, and Dalton. Weather observations showing typical Aleutian patterns. Evening log submissions to Virgil. Everything routine. But anxiety gnawed at him constantly. When would the evidence reach Washington? Would Senator Magnuson take it seriously? Would he investigate? Or would military intelligence intercept it somehow? Each day felt like waiting for a bomb to explode. On October 8th, Thursday, the bomb exploded. Morning started normally. Harlan conducted measurements. Everyone examined. Data recorded. Then, at 0900 hours, Virgil's voice came over the station intercom. All personnel report to the recreation area immediately. Harlan entered to find Virgil standing with Dr. Caldwell. Both had grim faces. "Gentlemen," Virgil began, "we have a security situation. It has come to my attention that classified information may have been compromised. A full investigation is underway. Until further notice, this station is under complete lockdown. No one leaves. No one uses the radio without my personal authorization. No personal communications. No mail. No exceptions." His eyes found Harlan. "Beckett, my office. Now." Harlan followed, heart hammering. Inside Virgil's office, the door closed. Locked. Virgil turned. Harlan tried to sound calm. Virgil moved fast, grabbed Harlan's collar, slammed him against the wall. His voice was ice. "Personnel reported seeing you near the research facility late at night, September 23rd. You broke in. You accessed classified files. You photographed documents. You also passed something to the supply pilot yesterday. Where are the original photographs?" Harlan's mind raced. They'd been watching. Somehow, they'd known. Virgil grabbed Harlan roughly, twisted his arm behind his back. Pain shot through his shoulder. No point lying now. They walked to Harlan's room. Virgil held a pistol against his back. Harlan retrieved the film canister from its hiding spot, handed it over. Virgil examined it, pocketed it. "Good. Now you're going to write a statement. You'll confess to violating security protocols. You'll state that you were experiencing severe psychological distress from isolation, paranoid delusions. You'll agree to immediate psychiatric evaluation and medical treatment. Sign it, and this ends quietly. You'll be evacuated, receive appropriate care, and the matter will be closed. Refuse, and you face court-martial for espionage during wartime." "What about the evidence I gave to Lloyd?" Virgil smiled, no warmth in it. "Lloyd Kittredge has been a War Department contractor for 3 years, part of security for this project. He reported your approach immediately. The notebook and letter were confiscated before the plane left Alaskan airspace. They're already destroyed. No one in Washington knows anything. You accomplished nothing except proving you can't be trusted." Harlan felt his world collapse. Lloyd had betrayed him. The evidence was gone. Everything he'd risked was for nothing. Harlan signed. He had no choice. October 9th, Friday. Dr. Caldwell examined him in the medical office. That afternoon, they gave him his first injection. Compound XR7, presumably. The same poison they'd been giving the others. Within hours, the world became blurry, distant. Harlan lay on his cot, unable to form clear thoughts. They'd won. October 10th through 31st blurred together into an indistinct fog. Daily injections. Harlan lost track of time, lost the ability to care, became hollow, empty, like Wendell. The green notebook continued, but now Virgil kept it himself, recorded Harlan's deterioration alongside the other subjects. Subject M7 responding well to treatment, compliance increasing, resistance decreasing, awareness suppressed. Subject now performing duties mechanically without questioning. November passed. December. Harlan barely remembered. He worked the weather instruments automatically, recorded data without processing what it meant, ate without tasting, slept without dreaming, existed without living. The experiment continued. January 1944, a voice announced over the intercom. Virgil's voice. February 1st, 1944, they loaded 5 men onto a transport plane. Wendell Craddock, Fletcher Drummond, Dalton Grimes, Merritt Yancey, Harlan Beckett. 5 broken men who'd gone to Attu Island and been destroyed. Virgil Satterwhite and Dr. Caldwell remained behind, transferring to another classified project. The plane lifted off. Harlan stared out the window through a chemical haze, watched Station Kodiak 7 shrink below, disappear into gray clouds. Forever. February 2nd, 1944, Portland, Maine. Harlan's mother waited at the train station. She didn't recognize him at first. He'd lost 30 pounds. His eyes were empty. When she embraced him, he didn't respond, just stood there. "Harlan? Baby, are you all right?" He said nothing, couldn't find words. Was he alive? Physically, his heart beat, his lungs breathed, but everything that made him Harlan had died on that island. February 5th, documents arrived. $5,000. Housing allowance. Job offer at the Weather Bureau in Boston. Everything they'd promised. Payment for silence. The papers required his signature. He signed without reading. What did it matter? March 10th, 1944, newspaper article. Dalton Grimes, 40, killed in industrial accident at shipyard. Tragic loss. Harlan read it with dim understanding. Dalton hadn't adjusted. The withdrawal from compound XR7. The psychological damage. Too much. He couldn't go on. March 28th, another article. Wendell Craddock, 47, dies in house fire. No foul play suspected. Harlan understood. Wendell couldn't live with what had been done to him. Couldn't function. The damage was too deep. May 15th, 1944, Seattle. Harlan made the trip, compelled by something he couldn't name. Found Fletcher Drummond at a waterfront shipyard. The radio operator was welding, thin and shaking, barely functional. Wife had left. Daughter's gone. Living in a boarding house. Drinking to forget. Fletcher nodded. Went back to welding. Harlan left. July 20th, 1944. Merritt Yancey was committed to Agnews State Hospital in California. Diagnosis: paranoid schizophrenia with delusional disorder. Patient claims to have been subjected to government experimentation. Exhibits severe psychological trauma. Prognosis: poor. Expected to remain institutionalized indefinitely. Harlan read the commitment notice. They'd done it again. Anyone who tried to talk, anyone who couldn't stay silent, got locked away with a psychiatric label. No one would believe a crazy person. December 31st, 1944. Harlan spent New Year's Eve alone in a Boston boarding house. He'd managed to function enough to work at the Weather Bureau, recording temperatures, measuring rainfall, simple tasks that didn't require thinking. On his desk, copies of the Green Notebook. He'd hidden duplicates before they'd taken the original, as proof, as evidence that it had been real, not delusions, not paranoia. Real. He looked at those pages, saw the systematic destruction of 6 men: Wendell, Fletcher, Dalton, Merritt, Thurston, himself. All destroyed for science, for national security, for understanding how to break human minds. He survived 45 more years, got married in 1950, divorced in 1953, worked, drank, not heavily but regularly, just enough to keep the memories distant, changed jobs often, moved frequently, never stayed anywhere long, never got close to anyone. The War Department had taken his ability to trust, to feel, to connect. He was functional, but not alive. 1989, 71 years old, dying of lung cancer. Harlan made final arrangements, contacted the National Archives, sent them the Green Notebook anonymously, with a note. Evidence of illegal human experimentation conducted by U.S. War Department at Weather Station Kodiak 7, Attu Island, Alaska, 1942 to 1944. Let someone know the truth. The archives accepted it, classified it, sealed it until 2039. 50 years. Long enough that everyone involved would be dead. But the evidence exists. proof that on Attu Island, at Weather Station Kodiak 7, during World War II, 5 American men volunteered for what they believed was cold weather endurance research. Instead, they became test subjects for a chemical weapon designed to destroy human will and personality. Administered systematically for nearly 2 years, documented meticulously, and when they were broken beyond repair, discarded, silenced, destroyed. Some couldn't go on. Some went mad. Some lived with the damage forever. All sworn to silence under threat of prosecution. The experiment was successful. The compound worked. It could break men completely. And the government learned that no one would ever believe the victims. Because who trusts a paranoid psychiatric patient claiming the government poisoned him? The perfect crime. The perfect cover-up. The perfect destruction of 5 human souls in the name of science and national security.